Hey, what's up, Titans? It's Coach Fishbein. We're going to do your Unit 2 review for AP Human Geography, Population and Migration. Let's get to it. So, I got some questions up here that we're going to try to answer over these next few slides. And the first question is, what influences population? And I've broken down these answers into two different categories. And the first of that is physical factors that influence populations. And essentially, you want to try to think about places where it's impossible for humans to live. And the first example that I have here are deserts. It's too hot, it's too dry, not a very good spot for humans to live in. All right, we also got wetlands, too wet, too cold. It's difficult to grow some crops in a wetland area like a jungle, like in the Amazon basin. That's going to influence not very much population. We also got polar regions. Obviously, it's very cold there, impossible to grow any crops. Yes, people still do live there thanks to possibilism, but it's not going to be very hospitable to large human populations. Last example I got are mountains, usually too high. The elevation's too high to grow a lot of crops. It's very difficult for populations to sustain themselves in mountainous places like this. Right? There's also human factors that influence population like culture, economics, history, and politics. All right, there's probably 1,000 examples of all of those. Shouldn't be hard for you to think of some examples on your own. All right, next question we got. How do geographers measure density? And there's two main ways in which they do that. And those are arithmetic and physiological density. So you see here we have the state of Egypt, right? And on this thematic map, the color of the region corresponds to Egypt's population density. The scale here goes into a darker red and into purple. Those are more populous regions. The lighter yellow and cream colors are less densely populated places. All right, and you'll see that here in this state, most of the state has a very low physiological density because a lot of it is the Sahara Desert. But along the Nile River, which you see flows to the north up into the Mediterranean Sea, the population density there is a lot higher. All right, most of the people in Egypt live along the Nile River. All right, and that is because it has a high physiological density, not arithmetic density. Arithmetic density is the amount of people per all land, right, regardless of whether it's hospitable to humans or not. So in a state like Egypt, the arithmetic density doesn't really tell us a whole lot about this state. Physiological density is going to be give us a more accurate picture of where people can live in a state like Egypt. We also have agricultural density, which tells us the number of farmers in a region. Okay, and you'll see on this map, you'll see that one continent in particular has a much higher agricultural density, and that continent is Africa. You should ask yourself, what's going on in Africa? Why are there people? Why are there so many people who are farmers who live in Africa? What stage in the demographic transition model might they be in? Okay, and we'll get to that demographic transition model in just a moment. All right, next question I got. How do geographers visualize populations? And one way in which they do this is by using population pyramids. And we have three different types of population pyramids. The first one is this one, called a rapid growth pyramid. And you'll see it looks more like a traditional pyramid. It looks a lot like a triangle. The largest cohorts are at the bottom, the youngest people. And once these people at the very bottom reach reproductive age, which for our purposes is about 15 years old, they're going to want to give birth to their own children. And since there's a lot of them, that's going to mean a lot more children. So a state like this, like Nigeria, they are going to have a rapidly growing population in the next few years. The next type is slow growth. We have a slow growth pyramid when we see that the cohorts up until the advanced ages are relatively the same. All right, so you'll see France here in 2020. They're not exactly the same, right? It's not broken down perfectly evenly, but for the most part, there's the same number of babies as there are people in their 70s. So this means that this state, France, is not going to experience a very significant population growth, right? It'll grow slowly, but it's not going to grow as rapidly as Nigeria. The last type of population pyramid is population decline. And on a decline pyramid, you're going to see the point of the pyramid kind of pointing downwards. And you see this here with Japan. Japan's got a very large number of old people, a large number of people here at the top of the pyramid. And as you go down the cohorts towards the younger groups, you'll see that there's less and less of them. And it creates kind of this point situation. Okay, so those are the three types of population pyramids. Okay. Next, we've got a few different statistics that demographers use to measure populations. We have life expectancy, which is the average length of life in years, total fertility rate, which is the average number of children per woman, crude birth rate, which is essentially births in a population, death rate is deaths in a population, infant mortality rate, that one's really sad. That's when children die. So infant mortality is a measure of deaths of children under 1 year of age per 100 births. Rate of natural increase, that one is what it sounds like. It's how our population grows from a natural standpoint. All right, that's only going to mean births and deaths. So you take that crude birth rate, you subtract the death rate from it, and that's how you get rate of natural increase. And then doubling time is the time it takes for a population to double. So to go from 200 million to 400 million, for example. Next, we got the demographic transition model. And we talked about this a lot in class. I'm not going to break down every single stage right now, but essentially what this model shows us is that throughout human history, we've gone from a stage 1 situation where we have high birth rates and high death rates down to a stage 4 situation with low birth rates and low death rates. Now, in stage 2 and 3, the death rate fell before the birth rate did. And in that interim period, we had a very high rate of natural increase, which added a lot of people to the population. You'll see there's a blue line. This is the total population, and it has gone up significantly in the few centuries that have transpired since this demographic transition started happening. Okay, what we're starting to see now is a possible stage 5, where this birth rate even dips below the death rate, and our RNI goes negative, and we might see those populations start to decrease. Next, we got some population theories, and this first one we have is Malthusian theory. This was put out there by a guy named Thomas Malthus in the 1800s, and he essentially predicted that we're going to run out of food if we don't have positive checks on our population. If we don't choose to stop having as many babies, we're going to run out of the food to feed them all, okay? And this graph kind of shows his theory. You'll see food production is this diagonal line, and our food production increases over time, but the population increases faster in a curved exponential fashion. But once we get to this limit right here, this is what Malthus calls carrying capacity. And we can't exceed that capacity. We can't exceed that ceiling. So something's going to happen, like a famine or a drought or a war, that is going to cause the population to decrease. All right? We'll go back within the zone where we can have more people. It'll increase again until we get to that threshold again, where something's going to happen that's going to drive down the population. Next, we got cornucopian theory. And cornucopian theory, which was theorized by a lady named Esther Bostrup, postulates that we are going to essentially be able to invent our way out of those problems. Okay, so our resources stay stable over a period of time, and then we're able to invent something, and we're able to extract more resources from the land. So we're essentially increasing that carrying capacity over time, and that allows this population curve to keep on going. So essentially, humans' ingenuity and problem solving and innovative spirit is going to allow the population to keep on growing. All right. One last school of thought is social critics, and the social critics would tell you that we have plenty of food. We're nowhere near the limit. We're nowhere near our carrying capacity. We have the ability to create lots of food. We have lots of resources to sustain life here on this planet, but the problem is that they are not distributed equally or equitably, and that's going to cause this problem of food insecurity, where people don't have access to food. So this map shows the percent of the population that's undernourished in states around the world, and just because you see these red and orange states here in Africa, don't think that that's only a problem in Africa. We see food insecurity at lots of different scales. So here in the United States, for example, 99% of U.S. counties are home to people who can't afford food, and you'll see this problem significantly in the southeast portion of the United States. All right, how do countries create population policy? So I like this chart. It's kind of like a population pyramid, but it's a little bit different, and you can see the change over time. But this is population by broad age group in Nigeria, okay? And you'll see in Nigeria, we have a very few people who are over 65 years of age. And most of the people, like 125 million, I'll call that, are under the age of 24. this is like the working age population, 15 to about 64, and there's a lot of kids in Nigeria. So we would call this a youth-dependent nation. And in a country like this, you're going to see the government of this region try to adopt what we call an anti-natalist policy. They're going to try to do something to make sure that their population doesn't go out of control. So they might institute something like a one-child policy, like what happened in China in the 20th century, or essentially try to discourage people from having babies in some way. The opposite of this is old age dependency. Now we've got Japan again, all right? And you'll see in Japan, we have got a significant portion of the population that's over 65 years of age. And we have very few people who are younger than 25, very few people who are younger than 15. So we have old age dependency here. And a problem that this state might face is that they run out of the workers who are making money and paying taxes that can support these elderly people who don't work for themselves anymore. So they might adopt what we call a pro-natalist policy, where they're trying to encourage their citizens to have babies, to create more workers, to sustain that older population. So next we got the age dependency ratio. Let's go back to Japan. And on this slide, I've colored the people within Japan who are going to be working, who are working age. So these are people who are older than 24 and younger than 65. The ages can vary from place to place, but this is just a pretty good snapshot of who is going to be working. And you'll see in this country, as we just mentioned, there's a lot of people at the top of the pyramid. So Japan needs people within this working age in order to sustain the people at the top and the people at the bottom. So they're going to get in trouble here pretty soon with this age dependency ratio, where essentially their government's not going to be able to collect enough taxes to support the people at the top or at the bottom of the pyramid. All right, let's transition to migration. Next question we got is, why do people migrate? Well, there's probably something that's causing them to want to leave their home country. And we call those things push factors. It's essentially pushing them away from their home country. So it can be environmental, social, cultural, economic, political, even demographic. But there's some sort of factor that's making them want to leave their country. Now, they probably want to go somewhere else, and that somewhere else is a lot better of a situation. And those factors are called pull factors. It's something that's pulling them towards the country that they want to go to. All right, now we have two different types of migration. We have forced migration and voluntary migration. We're going to talk about forced migration first. Now, most people who are forced to migrate, they actually don't leave their country, and they are called internally displaced people because they are staying internal within that country. They're not going over any borders to another country. And this map shows that there's 40 million people worldwide who are internally displaced. They have to leave their home for some reason, but they're not going to go to another country. Now we have asylum seekers and refugees. Anyone who is going to leave their country because there's some sort of push factor that's causing them to leave in a forced way, they are going to be an asylum seeker first, and they are going to have to find refugee status in the state that they are going to. Once they can be granted that refugee status, lots of times that new state will give them some sort of financial assistance or some sort of protection so that they can get on their feet in their new country. All right, and here's another map that shows where Syrian refugees have settled across the United States. The push factor here, or the pull factor here for these Syrian refugees, is the United States is a pretty great place to live politically. We're not experiencing the civil war that these refugees have experienced in their home country, and there's a lot more stability here. There's economic opportunities, liberty, freedom, democracy. Those are going to be all things that Syrian refugees want to find in their new country. All right, let's talk about voluntary migration. We've got transnational migration, in which migrants are leaving their country and going to another one, but they try to keep some sort of connection to their home country. You see that here. This is a picture of Chinatown in San Francisco. San Francisco is obviously very far away from China, but there's a large Chinese community in that city, and a place like Chinatown kind of helps keep that connection with those immigrants' home country. Next, we got transhumans, and as this photo shows, the creatures doing the migrating here with transhumans all the time, they're not human, right? They're animals, and the humans who take care of them, who herd them, they might be crossing borders in order to take care of their crops. So that's transhumans. We've got internal migration. Internal migration is when you are leaving your home and going to somewhere else within your own country. So a lot of times this happens when people go off to college, or maybe you move because of a job opportunity. Maybe your family moves because your mom or dad got a job opportunity. That is internal migration. We've got chain migration. Chain migration has been in the news over the last couple of years, and this term has really become politicized. And what I mean by that is that it's taken on this connotation, and I would argue a negative connotation, where people don't like chain migration. But essentially what chain migration is, or family reunification, is it's migration where you're trying to reunite with your family. So it's difficult to migrate from place to place. So sometimes families might send a father figure or maybe an older sibling, and then over time that family will want to be reunited, and maybe one parent will come and then the younger siblings, and that is chain migration. We've got step migration, and step migration is something you see with a lot of Central American migrants. They might be experiencing some sort of push factor that's causing them to want to leave a place like Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador, and they'll travel north through Mexico, and their ultimate destination is the United States. But lots of times they'll find some sort of opportunity somewhere here in Mexico and stop for a little bit until that benefit kind of runs out, whether that's a seasonal job or the kindness of a stranger or the kindness of a family member. Their ultimate goal is to get to the United States, but lots of times they'll stop somewhere along the way because there's some sort of benefit to them there. Next, we got guest workers. Some people migrate just for a little bit in order to make money, and then they send some of that money home, and the term for that is called remittances. All right, this state, which is the Maldives, got cut off a little bit right there, but the Maldives has a lot of guest workers, and a lot of them are coming from Southeast Asia to work at these beautiful resorts that are along the beach. As you can see in this population pyramid, most of these guest workers are male, so that's why you get this population pyramid with this wing of working age people only on one side of the pyramid, on the male side. And finally, we have rural to urban migration. That one's pretty simple. It's when we have people who live in a rural area leaving that area to find work in an urban area. India is a state that experiences this a lot, and this map shows that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Unit 2. I hope this video was helpful to you. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe on this channel, and hopefully we'll have some more videos coming soon. Have a good one. Bye.